Clara Johnson moved quietly through the grand Whitmore estate, polishing silver that had not seen guests in years. For decades she had worked in that mansion, a place of wealth and silence, serving a man who had everything except companionship. Mr. Whitmore, the millionaire owner, was known throughout the city as cold and untouchable, a man who locked himself away from the world. Servants came and went, dazzled by the paychecks, frustrated by his distance. But Clara stayed. It wasn't the salary that bound her, it was something deeper. She had seen, behind his stern expressions and endless riches, a man carrying loneliness like a heavy coat. Clara knew what it meant to feel unseen, to move through life as though invisible, and so she offered him the one thing he could not buy, kindness. She greeted him every morning with warmth, listened without judgment to his rare, halting words, and treated him not as an employer, but as a soul who needed care. Years slipped by, and while others whispered about the mystery of his wealth, Clara understood the truth of his emptiness. She never asked for favors, never reached for what wasn't hers. Instead, she remained steady, a quiet presence in the halls of marble and glass. In her heart, she believed that even the richest man deserved to be reminded of his humanity. And though he never said it aloud, Mr. Whitmore began to rely on Clara in a way he never had with anyone else. Mr. Whitmore's health began to falter, and the once intimidating man now spent his evenings wrapped in blankets by the fire, his voice softer, his eyes distant. One night, when the house was still and the air heavy, he called Clara to sit with him. She hesitated at first, he had never invited her so personally, but something in his tone carried a rare vulnerability. As the flames flickered, Mr. Whitmore let out a weary sigh. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling, "I've built empires, collected wealth beyond measure. Yet I feel I've done nothing that truly matters." The admission startled her. For years, she had only known him as proud, self-contained, guarded behind walls higher than the mansion itself. Now, he seemed like a man stripped of titles, clinging to a final chance for meaning. She leaned closer, listening. He spoke of regrets, how he had chased power, lost friends, and never gave back to the world that had given him everything. "All this money," he said, his hand weakly gesturing toward the grand room, "and none of it fills the emptiness." Clara's heart swelled with compassion. She had always known there was more beneath his silence, but hearing him confess it out loud pierced her deeply. For the first time, she saw not the millionaire, but the lonely man who longed for redemption. In that fragile moment, she did not respond with pity, only quiet understanding. Sometimes, the greatest gift is simply to be heard. Mr. Whitmore's eyes glistened as he gathered the strength to continue. His voice was barely above a whisper, yet each word carried the weight of a lifetime. "Clara," he said, "when I'm gone, I don't want my wealth to rot in vaults or feed the greed of men who never cared for me. I want it to mean something. I want it to lift the very people I ignored." Clara froze, unsure she'd heard him right. He coughed, then pressed on. "You come from the neighborhoods I never set foot in. Places where children go hungry, where dreams are buried before they're born. Promise me you'll take what I leave and put it where it belongs. Schools, food, hope, things I never gave. You are the only one I trust." Her heart pounded. She was just a maid, a woman who knew hard work but not high finance. The thought of managing a fortune seemed impossible. "Sir, I'm no banker," she whispered. But Whitmore managed a faint smile. "That's exactly why. You've never been blinded by greed. You've served with heart, not ambition. That is what the world needs." Tears blurred Clara's vision. She felt the enormity of his request pressing down on her shoulders, yet she also felt the honor of being chosen. With trembling hands, she reached for his. "I promise," she said softly. "I'll make it matter." Relief washed over his face, and for the first time in years, Mr. Whitmore closed his eyes with peace. When Mr. Whitmore passed, the city buzzed with rumors of his fortune. Lawyers, investors, and distant relatives circled like hawks, expecting to inherit pieces of his empire. But when the will was read, gasps filled the room. Nearly everything was left to Clara Johnson, the maid who had dusted his halls for decades. The disbelief was instant. Some sneered, calling her unfit. Others tried to sway her, insisting she sell the estate or hand the money over to real professionals. But Clara remembered her promise, and no amount of doubt could shake it. She stood firm, even when her hands trembled in secret. With the inheritance, Clara didn't buy luxury cars or gowns. Instead, she walked back into the neighborhood she once called home, where children played on cracked sidewalks and parents worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. She funded scholarships, built a community center with free meals, and opened a small library in a place where books were rare treasures. At first, people questioned her. How could a maid run such things? But as months turned into years, the results spoke louder than any skeptic. Children who once struggled to dream now spoke of college. Families who had known only struggle found dignity in opportunities they never imagined. Each project carried Whitmore's unseen fingerprints, yet the heart behind it was Clara's. She never forgot the lonely man's last words, and through her hands, his fortune began to breathe life into thousands of others. Years later, the community gathered for the unveiling of a new plaque at the heart of the bustling center Clara had built. Laughter of children filled the air, and families gathered in celebration. The plaque gleamed in the sunlight, engraved with the words, "In honor of Clara Johnson, who turned one man's last wish into a new beginning for thousands." Clara, now older and moving slower, sat quietly in the crowd. She never sought recognition, yet as she looked around, at the classrooms alive with eager students, at the mothers who no longer feared hunger, at the young men and women stepping into brighter futures, her eyes brimmed with tears. A little girl tugged gently on her hand and whispered, "Miss Clara, thank you." Clara smiled, her voice soft but steady. "Don't thank me, sweetheart. Thank Mr. Whitmore. He gave me the chance. I only kept my promise." As music and laughter swelled, Clara whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "Wealth dies, but kindness lives on." She knew the mansion she once served in would one day crumble, the silver would tarnish, the fortune would scatter. But the lives touched would carry on far longer. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of legacy. It wasn't in riches or monuments, but in love passed forward. And though the millionaire had left this world years ago, through Clara's faithfulness, his last wish had bloomed into hope that could never be counted in dollars.